All right, guys, welcome. We are on the Edge, a knife nerd podcast with some of the finest knife nerds in the industry. I'm going to have the guys introduce themselves to you here in just a second, but today we will be talking about zero tolerance knives as a brand overall, and we will be talking about preferences between leather and Kydex. You're going to want to stick around.
Hey guys, I'm Jacob and you're watching the Preppers Bunker Outdoors. This is a Christian conservative prepping and survival channel with a bit of military tactics and background. If you'd like to support this channel, please check out the description box below. We have my websites, beachandtactical.com, where I sell handmade rifle slings, custom to order, and Exodus Knife and Tool. Our knives are made in the USA and are made to be practical. All right, this month, for the month of April, our sponsors is Black Bear Custom Kydex, because I love his Kydex work. So you can check him out in the link below for the month of April. We have a Patreon, we have affiliate links. Also, check out Kentuckiana Gunworks for locally made gun oils and grease. They're absolutely fantastic. And you can use the coupon code TPBO for a discount. Check that out. Let's get you right back to the content.
All right, we are back. Like I said, we have some of the finest knife nerds that I personally know on the show today. All of their information will be in the description box below, so you can see how you can follow them if you appreciate following knife nerds or meeting fellow knife nerds. So guys, why don't you introduce yourselves real quick?
Well, I am Danny Riskett, and please don't dox me, but I do have this statement to read regarding last podcast.
Just real quick, let me elaborate. Danny was very nearly not invited back onto the show. However, we had a talk. We made a bit of a deal here, and so Danny's going to fix some things from the last podcast.
Yes, I have a prepared statement here. Thank you. So, to whom it may concern, regarding my poor attempt at humor and unprofessional behavior during the last show, I guess I need to read that. Sometimes I can take a joke too far and not even realize it. Sometimes I get carried away trying to make myself look clever or funny or smart. But in reality, sometimes these jokes are unfunny and obnoxious. I am really sorry that my behavior became so hurtful. Teasing is only funny if both people like the joke. And I realize now that my joking was mean rather than funny. I will try to do better and be better in the future. Sincerely, Danny Riskett. Thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to apologize for last week.
Well, all right. So nobody send a cease and desist to Danny. That is squared away. Danny, did your lawyer force you to release that statement?
Well, I am representing myself.
All right, good deal.
I have watched a lot of Judge Judy, though, so I am fairly confident in my legal abilities.
That's about as solid as it gets. All right, Phil, you wanna fill us in here?
Sure. So I'm Phil from Phil's EDC, based out of Canada. Currently only have Instagram. You can find me at PMW22 or Phil's EDC.
Good deal. Everybody go make sure that you follow him. Again, the link will be in the description box below, and you do some of the coolest videos on Instagram.
Thank you.
Not to step on Phil or whoever's next, but yes, I am on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube only.
Good deal. Gabriel, The Last Huntsman, what's up?
Gabriel with The Last Huntsman here. I have a YouTube channel, The Last Huntsman, and a Instagram, also The Last Huntsman. I do just gear and knife reviews and such, and I am proudly banned on Facebook, so you can't find me there. But
There we go. All right, Ben.
So I'm Ben. You can find me on Instagram at 5C Knives. That's pretty much it. Everywhere else I avoid.
Good deal. All right, guys. So today, I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but again, I want to remind our viewers today that all of these guys, links to them can be found in the description box below. And these are guys that are vetted by myself as people that basically I found who actually use their gear. And that doesn't sound very impressive, but in today's day and age, it is. So today we're going to kick off with talking about zero tolerance. In the last episode, this is the second episode. In the last episode, we talked about SE and tops. Some sparks flew. Today we're going to talk about zero tolerance knives and about whether we prefer leather or Kydex and why. I'm going to go ahead and kick us off with zero tolerance. I carried a zero tolerance knife in Afghanistan 2009 and 10. And I also carried Kershaw knives. If you're not aware, both Kershaw and Zero Tolerance are owned by KAI, or is it Kai? I don't know. One of these other guys probably does. But I was impressed with both knives at the time. I carried a 0350, kind of a smaller version of what was at the time their flagship knife, the 0300 series. And I liked it a lot. I believe that Kershaw has gone through a bit of a weird transition. They used to be overbuilt pocket knives, and they still advertise the overbuilt side of things, but they're not really overbuilt anymore. They're just kind of normal built now. And the knives that created their name back in the day with their folders aren't even offered anymore, which I think is a bummer. But they're always doing new stuff. They're pushing, they always get new steels. They're a little bit known when a new steel comes out for poor heat treat, especially with LMAX. When that first came out, they were really well known for chippy edges. But they usually get stuff squared away, and I think they make cool designs. They have good designers, I think, and they're willing to get out there and try stuff with some steels, and I think that's pretty cool. What are you guys' experience or thoughts on Zero Tolerance as a brand?
Well, I've heard, I guess, mixed things about Zero Tolerance. I would say mostly good. But of course, there's also, two sides to every story about every brand. But I haven't heard anything outrageously outside the good realm about them. But I personally have no experience with Zero Tolerance directly. I've never owned one. The closest, I guess you could say, is I've had a Kershaw. It was one of the Kin Onion designed ones, but it's been so long I cannot remember which model it was. The only issue I had with that is after a couple of years, the lock did give up. So yeah, it wouldn't stay closed properly. But other than that, I mean, I really enjoyed it. Didn't have any edge retention issues, didn't have any edge issues at all. It's just that lock decided, hey, I wasn't gonna close anymore.
Yeah. Good deal. Gabriel, I know that you're interested in a new fixed blade from them, or have some thoughts on that. You want to fill us in?
yeah, so I kind of always have liked just the old classic combat style type of knife. The one I'm particularly talking about from Zero Tolerance is the 0006 model in CPM 3V, and it has kind of just a basic guard straight handle on it. And I've been kind of checking that knife out. But there's a few things that I think Zero Tolerance could have done better with that knife personally. One, if you just check out how it comes apart, the guard is actually like a completely separate piece. And of course you could slide it out and stuff. And some people might like that. But I actually think if they just made the guard integral to the entire tang of the knife, and then instead of having the little pommel end cap piece that screws in, if they just extended the tang out towards the bottom, I think that would have been a much simpler build for that knife and made it a lot more solid. Now, I don't really have any physical experience with zero tolerance. I've always heard their quality and everything is great. However, I do have one bad experience with a Kershaw. I had a Kershaw. It was one of their cheap folders. It was a Blur, and the model was called the Blur, if I recall right. And that was the only knife I've ever had the liner lock break, and it broke as I was using it, and the knife closed in on my hand. So that wasn't exactly pleasant, but so that was my only Kershaw experience. So
Wow. Well, Ben, Phil, do you guys have any firsthand experience with the brand, or do you have anything that you want to add on the 006 or 0006? 006, 0006,
I think it's the 0006.
0006.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I kind of want to get my hands on that at some point. I have minimal experience with zero tolerance. First one I got was the 456, I think it is. I couldn't honestly tell you who made it. Lighting here kind of sucks in the dungeon, but kind of a beefy folder. I've used it for a while now and just kind of love it. Kind of fallen out of rotation, but it's kind of a shiny tank, but you can still beat on it. Not too long ago, I picked up the 0357, which kind of surprised, like you were saying, definitely slimmed down, toned down, definitely more on the cost-effective side, but I don't feel, it doesn't feel cheapened and how they kind of toned it down. I've heard people complain about it. It's not what it used to be in terms of what they're known for in terms of being a tank. But in terms of an EDC knife, I have had zero issues with it. And it's definitely on the slicier side, where unless you need a folder to be beaten on, I don't really see the need to really get too much thicker, where you start getting into like the Medford size, and it's overdone in my opinion for no reason other than the fact that you got a knife that big, you can't break it, so it's idiot proof, but it doesn't make it a great knife.
Well, I could probably break it.
Bill, it looks like Zoom wants you to talk next because you're on the big screen.
All right. So I unfortunately have minimal experience, but I have owned a few. Like most people, I probably started off with multiple Kershaws. I think my first higher end folder was probably a Kershaw Blackout. That was a big deal 15 years ago in Canada because it was the Speed Safe, US made Speed Safe tech. So it was assisted. And I love that knife. I must have lost about 3 of them due to the design of the pocket clip, but I kept buying them because I liked them so much. And I believe, I'm trying to remember the steel on it. I think it was like 14C something.
Yep.
Some Sandvik on it anyways. It would not hold an edge very well. I didn't realize that at the time, but now I do. After multiple years of experience with higher end steels. And then in the way of ZT, I have had 0640, the Emerson manual. Beautifully made tank. I think what drew it to me was its kind of slim profile. And the 20 CV. I do hear they do it quite well. It kind of reminded me like a Benchmade 940 on steroids. And I got it. I loved it. Fit and finish, titanium, carbon fiber inlays. However, I was not impressed with such a thin blade, how bad their final edge geometry was. It was just not a slicey knife. I ended up selling it to a close friend after I reprofiled, and it worked better. But aside from that, I can't complain about fit and finish. And in regards to that newer combat model, I think you guys said 0006.
Yeah.
I love the look of it. Love the idea that it's 3V. I totally agree with Gabriel in regards to the guard being not integral and being separate. I guess that makes it great for servicing. You can take the scales off, you can take the pommel off, you can clean. 3V is not super stainless. So I guess in certain situations, maybe salt water, maybe that's why they did that. But I'd have to agree. And I feel like that pommel, if you were to actually use it to bash something, that screw holding it in over time, it's going to mushroom around it and I think become a bit of a problem. But we'll see.
So
Yeah.
one thing I want to say about that is most guards on knives are not integral. So an integral guard means that, your handle and your blade were forged or ground from a solid piece, and the guard is remaining there from that same solid piece of steel. It's a very rare attribute to find on a guarded knife. And if you think about most guarded knives, most of them have like a brass guard or something like that. So obviously that's not integral. What makes the zero tolerance different is the removable scales and be able to slide it right off. I can't think of many knives with a guard that have removable scales, probably for that reason. However, so I don't think that would be a problem necessarily, especially the micarta scales. In my opinion, it is a problem on like cold steel knives with the craton or whatever it is, rubber handles that they have, because they can loosen up and your guard will rattle with a lot of use and it can be annoying. But the pommel, I guess, is, there you go. Look at that. The pommel, I guess, is again going to be strengthened by the micarta that it rests against, or G10, which is very strong. However, it doesn't look like it's a locking nut, right? I mean, we saw the video. And so as like a soldier, if your pommel on your knife starts rattling because the screw started coming loose, and I don't know, that's gay.
I think the pommels are only as good as how they're attached.
Right. So I think it'd probably be fine. I think if someone were to take that screw and use red Loctite, I think it would be fine, because impact is not going directly to the screw and bolt. It's going to go to the tang into the scales, and they are G10 scales. So for the most part, as long as it doesn't come loose, it should be good. Now, if it does start to come loose, all it can catch on things, what grade bolt is used.
Right. Yeah,
bolts and screws are not as tough as the knife steels that we use that are heat treated typically,
I think my overall thoughts on it is that I think they just simply made it a little more complicated than what it could have been. And I think if they did just like I said, an exposed just tang pommel and integral guard, kind of like the half-breed blades. You see a lot of their like soldier knives, the tang and the guard are all just one piece. I think if they did something like that, it would have been like a home run on that knife.
Oh, so when you're talking about a guard, Gabriel, you're talking about a full tang knife that simply has a guard top and bottom, but not like a 360-degree guard?
Yes.
Okay, I get, because, well, and not to name drop, my buddy Aaron at NC Customized, it's actually Aaron Cybrant Studios now, he will forge a knife where it's forged out and the guard is 360 degrees, but it's one solid piece. So that's called an integral guard. So when you said that, that's what I thought of. Now that you mentioned that you're just talking about a more normal full tang top and bottom guard. Yeah, I agree that would be better. I think that they would probably lose some of the Gucci points that they're going for. I do think that the 360 guard and the fitted pommel have a very nice aesthetic. It gives a finished product that looks different cells, and good. But again, for practicality, I do agree. I think an exposed pommel and a more simple guard would have been the better choice.
I'm looking at the photos, I guess, of that knife now, and yeah, it looks pretty good. I'm not sure how well I like the texturing on the scales there. Also, I never saw I guess you're talking about there was a video about it. It's like an intro video or a teaser video or something. But I'm just wondering, like, did it show the screw that connects the pommel? It's like, do we know,
Yeah.
how wide is that screw? How long is it? What material that screw is made of? Because I mean, if it's just a super cheap stainless and you go to beat something with that, that pommel and that screw breaks real fast. I mean,
Do my famous attitude readjustment test.
Right.
And then rightly.
Right. So, yeah, there is a video on YouTube of someone taking this tang apart. If you search for it, you'll find it. So I'm not going to link it here. A lot of people were complaining about the fact that the tang is skeletonized, and your tang, where it is skeletonized, is actually a super low stress point on a knife. So I think a lot of people were making a lot of noise over that and saying that they wish that it was non-skeletonized for strength because they don't know any better, to be honest. But there are other things like we're talking about here that are more legitimate concerns.
Yeah, skeletonized tang can be fine if the geometry is done right.
It's really more than fine. Guys, manufacturers like myself spend a lot of extra money to have a tang skeletonized, and they don't do it to weaken their blade or make an inferior product. They spend a lot of extra money to skeletonize tangs. They're not recycling steel. There's no kickback to it. They're spending a lot of extra money to do it because there are large performance benefits to a skeletonized tang as long as it's done properly. So the next topic that we've got for tonight, guys, is leather versus Kydex. I know that I have one example of leather and Kydex on production knives tonight, and then I have one example of some custom Kydex and custom leather. But one of you guys can take the head on. Danny, why don't you take the head on this one? Because I have no doubt you've got some cool leather and Kydex to show us, and I'm excited to see it.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, with leather versus Kydex, really for me, it depends on, what's your environment and, how do you plan on using the knife? Because if you've got a stainless steel knife, it's going to work, or I think be better in leather. If you live, though, you got a carbon steel knife and you live kind of close to the coast, you might be better with the Kydex, because yeah, that leather is going to, even if it's treated with like snow seal or Obenaufs or something, I mean, it's still going to retain some moisture, and you're going to get at least some patina using the leather. So some leather versus Kydex knives that I have. I've got a Tops Bob Fieldcraft here in the stock sheath. It's pretty nice sheath. Absolutely no rattle to it. The clip maybe leaves a little bit to be desired, but I mean, for Kydex in and of itself, it's great. Also, though, I've got I believe this is a JRE, or it might be someone else. I can't really. No, it's not JRE. Can't read the logo on the back, but I have this leather sheath as well that usually I have this one in. I usually have the Tops Bob in.
Nice.
Got a nice leather. Yeah, single road stitch. Wish it was doubled, but that's okay. Some other leather versus Kydex. Got a dark timber Kodiak here in the stock Kydex sheath with some Raffensperger accents there. Again, I mean, you've got no rattle, only maybe a little rattle as you might have from little danglers there. But yeah, I've got that, works nice. I believe it was Matt Nichols at Grizzly Outdoors that did those Kydex, but I also have a Michael Spanger's leather sheath as well. And this one wow, this fits in super snug. And I've had this sheath probably 5 years. Never even realized that the belt loop could, could come undone like that. Never realized that I had it for like 5 years.
That's
I don't know
hilarious.
why I picked that up. And then run through some other stuff as well. I've got the White River, what is it, the Ursus in their Kydex. I mean, you've got nothing, no rattles there, nothing, super snug, super easy. Only maybe a little noise is you got the leather dangler rubbing, a little bit of squeak from that, but that's absolutely fine. Stitch Gear Outfitter, leather sheath for it as well.
Good deal.
Double
That's a
road.
super underrated knife, by the way.
Oh, it absolutely is. We might do another podcast later comparing it to some other knives. We'll see. And then,
am I hearing a underrated knives podcast coming up? Like just a
That's
whole
actually a
podcast?
fantastic idea.
That's actually a good one.
And then final thing, maybe for another podcast, is I've got a Habilis Bush Tools SRT. Haven't seen these in a while.
Yeah.
And I've got the leather sheath that comes with it from, this one definitely is from JRE Industries. Again, no issues there with it. No squeaking there. And I've got their Kydex. Now their Kydex, it's a pretty basic fold over there. Still, I mean, no squeak, but I don't know. This one just feels, I don't want to say cheap, but
yeah, no, I had a Habilis and I thought the sheath was personally awfully cheap.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. It gets the job done, but in this case, I would much rather be rocking it's leather there. But yeah, depending on your environments. So yeah, a stainless is gonna probably be better in your leather or Kydex. Also, the noise, as we talked about. If you're, hunting or maybe out on like a recon or something where you got to be really quiet. I mean, generally the leather is going to be, a little more quiet because with that Kydex, you have that pop that little click when you take it out or put it in. But, Kydex does, not hold that moisture as well. So it all really just depends. What's your steel, what's your environment, what you're trying to do.
Yep. Phil, what do you got for us? I'm excited to see.
So, well, again, I agree. When it comes to sheaths, it completely depends on steel and application. I love a good leather sheath. I love the feel when they're worked in. Of course, they can lose retention over time, but so can Kydex. This one was gifted to me. This is an awesome Delta leather. This has a magnetic retention, also scout carry as well as horizontal. I personally love the magnetic retention on them. Some people don't. This one I use for my SE3. Again, it's quite a corrosion prone steel in a leather sheath, but as long as you use your stuff and kind of take care of it, then you usually don't have a problem. However, if it's the fall or it's the spring and it's quite damp outside, I generally will carry something stainless or something high carbon in a Kydex. I have so many Kydex sheaths. Some companies do them amazingly, some others not so much. I do hate a rattle. Here's a custom Boxer Blades. He does pretty decent Kydex. The nice thing about Kydex is you can get some pretty awesome patterning. I don't know if you can see it very well, but it's kind of like a red snake skin sort of. Here's another custom. This is a Hatcher. Quite impressed. Very different style of Kydex sheath. Very wide for the size of the knife, but something about it I love. When I tuck it in my belt, I find it really kind of displaces the weight. And if I'm driving and bending over, it doesn't dig into dig into my abdomen as much. I'm not a big fan of what Benchmade's doing with their hunt series.
No.
I don't think a lot of people are.
Yeah.
And this is the Kydex. I believe this is a Boltron. We were talking about it earlier today, but it's very easy to confuse. It looks almost identical. But I am not a fan of that kind of a style of sheath. It's okay, literally just like a knife cover, and you can throw it into a pack. But I don't know. I think for the price you're paying for certain knives, there's no reason it can't come with a half decent belt loop.
So on the topic of Benchmade, when you are a really good Kydex sheath is to some degree a balance between a knife that is well designed for retention and a sheath that is well made. And the less retention points, the fewer retention points or the less strong retention points you have on the knife, the more skill it takes for the maker to make appropriate Kydex. And I have felt that on those newer Benchmades, not only do they have a knife that was not properly designed for Kydex, but then what they ended up with their Kydex, the design itself is just very, very, very poor. Really awful.
Completely agree with you. Completely agree. It's just like that, like the one they released here, the Anonymous. I'm beginning to like it more the more I use it, believe it or not. But I almost feel like that exaggerated guard was almost put on there so it had better retention in their Boltron sheath, personally, because that's the actual pinch point. But I mean, I could it pulls out. You shouldn't be able to pull it out that easily. So
one thing that's been hard for me as a brand is I have gotten quite a few complaints about the Kydex that we offer from people saying it's too hard to get the knife out of the sheath, you know, people that don't understand how to pop it off with your thumb. And so it's really hard to get a good balance between retention and security. There we go, Danny. And I think, although I personally believe that we do a fantastic job at Exodus Knife and Tool, at White River Knife and Tool over there. Yeah, rocket retention, man. You know, there's still, when people aren't used to it, they'll actually request less retention, which kind of bums me out a little bit. Anyways, that's a little bit off topic. I want to really quick add a little something for you guys and for my viewers. This is a Spirit of the Bear Designs leather sheath, but I myself also have a little bit of the problem with the D-ring making noise here. Spirit of the Bear Designs is my go-to leather guy. He has all of the Exodus Knife and Tool products so far. So if you want a sheath from him for an Exodus Knife and Tool knife, you do not have to send your knife in. He's my guy, and I think he's the best.
He does amazing work.
I added, you can see here on my D-ring, I added some, it's not 325 cord, but it's a really thin paracord, and I did a spiral braid on the D-ring itself, and that keeps it from clanking against metal and making noise. So that's one thing that you can potentially do if that's one of the issues you're running into. Ben, do you got any sheaths to show us tonight? Or opinions between leather and Kydex and why you like one or the other?
I used to just be strictly a leather guy. It didn't matter the steel, it didn't matter the situation. To me, leather was just the way to go. Obviously, I knew, you know, high carbon, leather, wet environments. Obviously, I'm going to have to either treat or clean. That was fine with me. I had no issue. I'd say that probably within the last 7 or 8 years, I've really come all along the Kydex train there, and just the versatility that Kydex started to provide in terms of adaptability, being able to add things without having to go with the nylon sheaths that already had a pouch built in or something like that. And nowadays, leather, a lot of the good leather work, you're starting to be able to adapt and add a ferro rod. You're able to piggyback things onto. I got a ton of custom leather sheaths that I didn't get a chance to pull out. I think the only leather I got on me is it's Delta leather pocket shield for my pocket essential.
Nice.
I've come around to leather. Usually I'll do Kydex on me for EDC. Usually bigger blades. I actually forgot this earlier. Kydex with an old ZT 170 fixed blade. It's more of a fighter with a guard.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been more just the durability and getting used to Kydex. But I honestly kind of just depends upon at this point the knife and how I'm feeling. But nothing beats a good old nice leather sheath.
Good
Now,
deal.
there is one thing that I haven't heard brought up yet, that I just kind of thought about with Kydex, and it's kind of a downside is sometimes, a little bit of debris can get in your Kydex sheath and not only scratch up your blade, but again, I mean, it increases the noise when you're taking, the knife out or putting it back in.
Yeah.
So that is absolutely the case. So what I've got here, I have two of what I believe to be excellent sheaths here, production sheaths, one in leather and one in Kydex. For the Kydex here, this is the White River Knife and Tool Firecraft PKO or PUCO. I think, again, White River Knife and Tool does a fantastic job with their Kydex. Rocket retention. It clicks out. Listen, if you can hear this clicking back in. Very nice. So your advantage, in my opinion, in Kydex is modularity. As you can see, I've got a loop here and I've got a ferro rod attached. We are getting to where we have that in more leather. I'll get to that in a moment. But also, in my opinion, most of the time with a leather sheath, if you want to remove your knife from the sheath with only one hand while the sheath is on your belt, usually leather either has security, but you need to use two hands, or it has ease of use with one hand, but then it's a little bit loose. And you can fit your leather sheaths, you can water form them to almost get a little bit of a Kydex-like hold on them. That's what I prefer to do. However, that will loosen up long before Kydex will, just like Gabe is showing us there. Now, Kydex,
I actually have a video.
What was that, Gabe?
I was saying I actually have a video on my YouTube where I show how to wet form a sheath, and it's actually really easy to do.
So what I'm going to do, I haven't done a video on it. I have done some wet forming. What I'm going to try and do here is I'm going to try and put a card to Gabriel's video on how to wet form a leather sheath into this video so that you guys watching can click on that. But a downside of your Kydex, when stuff gets into it, yes, it can get scratched up. That doesn't bother me personally at all. But
It gives a character.
In extreme heat, or if you leave your Kydex sheath, let's say under your windshield in your car, you can melt it.
I actually had a Kydex sheath, a SE4, or it was a SE5 Kydex sheath melt on me when I was in Death Valley, California. So
now your leather will not melt, but in extreme prolonged exposure to temperatures like that without oil or care, it will dry out and crack. Also, there are downsides both ways, but with your Kydex, I do 9 times out of 10, if practicality is the only thing we are talking about, prefer Kydex. However, I love a good leather sheath. Kydex can sometimes be overly wide, and often if your Kydex sheath is not done correctly, it's awful. Same for leather, but leather seems to be a little more forgiving in my opinion, and leather's more universal. I can take more leather sheaths and put 10 or 15 different knives into that sheath and have acceptable performance from the sheath, and you cannot do that with Kydex.
You can make a leather sheath out in the wild, but you can't make a Kydex sheath out in the wild.
Well, you know what? I'm going to go hunt down a Kydex tree and prove you wrong.
Yeah. I have heard also, though, that Kydex, when exposed, for a long time to extreme cold, can become brittle.
Yes, I've heard that as well. I have not experienced that. I've experienced the heat to a small degree a long time ago. I have not experienced the brittleness, but I do believe it. Now,
yeah.
My example of what I believe to be a very, very good production leather sheath here, this is the Phobos Knives Tier 1 Bushcraft. And so fantastic knife. I've been playing with this thing and wearing it constantly. Big fan. But this sheath, you can see designs from Kydex being utilized on leather now. So we've got rivets, OD green. I mean, the attention to detail in the sheath is amazing. OD green rivets. So we have a ferro rod holder riveted on. We have our scout straps, screwed on through the rivet. We have our scout straps screwed on. So those are removable if you want. We have the main dangler plate being screwed on. So it's removable if you want, just like a Kydex sheath. We have pull the dot buttons. So we have fantastic security, modularity in a sheath, all kinds of mounting options from the factory. It's soft, it's supple, it's quiet. It does take sometimes more usually than not 2 hands to take it in or out. But you've got with the snaps on here, you have absolute security. I would feel jump safe with this knife. I'm a huge fan. So leather has come a long way. The industry has evolved because of Kydex. And when, I started getting into Kydex in about probably 1996, we actually lived right next to Blade Tech. And my dad has one of the first ever Blade Tech Kydex knife sheaths. And I think it's like literally, I think the Kydex is like almost 1/8 of an inch thick. It's ridiculous from back then. That was probably from 95. But leather was the standard at the time, and I loved Kydex. I still do. However, Kydex has now become the standard. It's affordable, it's approachable, it's amazing. And I find myself liking leather sheaths more. Now, talking about custom Kydex, my channel sponsor for this month is Black Bear Custom Kydex. This is a get into bed. No, there's nothing terrible. Get into bed. This is a Black Bear Custom Kydex custom sheath for a custom mutant of mine. Just tons of modularity. Beautiful retention. Love Black Bear Custom Kydex. And then, guys,
White River, if you hear this, you need to release those.
Yeah. Let me just say, guys, if you hear us continuously talk about a brand or a custom maker in a positive light, we've heard Stitched Gear, we've heard Delta Sheaths, you've heard Michael Spaniards. If you hear a name repeatedly in a positive light here, that really means something. So this is my Red Beard Blades Midnight Patriot. Absolutely love this custom knife. And this is a custom sheath made by Michael Spaniards, who again is my go-to leather guy. I sent him my knives so that if you want one of his sheaths, he can make one for you without you sending yours in. But leather, man, I do love some good leather. So let me just say, I think that a bad leather sheath is better and more versatile than a bad Kydex sheath. I have worn a leather sheath in the military. It got caught on my body armor as I was bending over. It got onto the front of my belt a little bit, pushed on the handle, and stabbed through the leather sheath and into my thigh before in the field. That's not going to happen with Kydex. There are pluses and minuses of both of them. I do think I will go out on a limb and say that I do believe that Kydex, when well done, can be more practical for a larger range of things, whereas a good leather sheath can be more versatile for multiple knives, and it used to be a lot more affordable. Now, I don't know. I think you're about going to pay the same either way.
Now, if you want to get really Gucci, get leather wrapped Kydex.
Yes, and that's absolutely a thing. And I'll add too, like with Black Bear Custom Kydex, guys, if you get an OD green Kydex and do any kind of brown leather accents on it, or a leather dangler, or leather scout straps, anything like that, that is peak aesthetic. I don't even care. That's the best. So.
I don't know if I could really, I said, I don't know if I could really add much to what you guys all talked about with leather versus Kydex, because it seems like you guys kind of covered a lot of the bases. I will say I do agree with leather. You do kind of have some more versatility. I could take the same sheath and re-wet form it to an SE4 or something like that of a similar size. So there's that advantage. Kydex, my preferences overall with Kydex, I got, for example, here's the Lion Steel T6. Awesome knife. I actually overall like the presentation of it, but the Kydex is just a little bit on the big side versus something like the Reef F6, which has that more taco style, which, when you're actually just wearing that, then it's kind of a lot nicer to have that taco style type of sheath that's not like taking up half your leg, so there's kind of that. I don't know why I'm getting called on Instagram here.
Is that what that was?
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, so generally for Kydex, I like the taco style, and also for Kydex, I don't even mind like a molly back on Kydex. I think that kind of gives a lot of versatility, and I could always just strap it on my belt and not even really have to. And then, of course, I got this Papa Bear. He did a custom sheath for this here, which I thought was really neat. And me personally, for EDC, I like Kydex all the way, just because I'm wearing it all the time and I'm sweating and stuff when I'm working. So I'll always go with it.
Is that a rivet pattern on the back of that sheath?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, look at that.
It looks like kind of like a like World War II kind of airplane kind of layout on it, which got a shout out to Papa Bear Knives. He does some amazing work. And of course that's for the Essential here. So
man, I should have got my Essential out for the leather sheath. I actually have my leather sheath for my Essential wet formed, so now I'm regretting not having grabbed that.
But we kind of mentioned some leather sheaths. If you're wanting kind of a cheap option for a leather sheath, or I would say a good but cheaper option for a leather sheath, I'm actually pretty happy with the like JRE Industries leather sheaths, and most of the LT Wrights, like that's what this is, comes with one of these, but you can get on, I think, like the Knife Connection or a few other websites and just buy these for like $30-$40, and then you can wet form it to whatever knife you want.
Yep, Danny's got one there as well.
I didn't show it. I showed it, I think, last time, but yeah, JREs are great for the money for sure.
Well, and that's the thing, guys. If you've got a knife, and it used to be more common with custom makers and even production companies to buy a knife and for it to not come with a sheath. I'm kind of glad that that is dead. But if you have a knife with no sheath, you can go and buy a good or at least decent leather sheath that is universal fit that your knife will fit into. You can wet form it, and you have a sheath. Typically with a custom sheath, you've got to send your knife in. And there are companies who offer certain models of knives that they can make a Kydex sheath for without you sending yours in. But there are certain brands where that just doesn't work. In my opinion, with Scrapyard Knife Company or Ontario or any of these companies that are a little bit more handmade or stuff, the small differences from knife to knife are big enough that you cannot just order Kydex for them. Like, you can't just order Kydex for a Bark River knife because somebody has the same model as you and makes Kydex. They're handmade. They're going to be too different. So ease of getting the knife onto your belt. If you've got to buy a sheath, leather's a really appealing option for that.
One thing that was just kind of touched on briefly from Phil that I kind of would like to revisit is talking about the magnetic retention in leather sheaths. That's something you don't see very much of. I know a couple companies do it, again, like Bark River, at least on the smaller knives. And it's another option to help with security. Only thing I don't like about the magnetic retention is again, I think it's only really useful for smaller knives, but also you do have to make sure if you do have a magnet in your sheath there is keep it away from your compasses.
Yep. Good stuff. Well, does anybody have any extra input that they would like to add tonight?
Well, actually, yeah, I wouldn't mind bringing up something quick here. Just one thing I'm sure you guys, being as experienced as you are, have discovered. And I'm assuming you guys have a lot of condor pouches available to you. But I'm just doing this more for people maybe getting into knives, or whether it be leather or Kydex. These little pouches are, I guess they're multi-compatible horizontally, but they have these two straps. And I've been buying these. They are the handiest things in the world, whether it be a larger fixed blade Kydex, leather, it doesn't matter. But you can literally put them over top of your sheath, any sheath you might have. And now you have a completely different carry system with a potential fire steel or ferro rod holder, or even a little flashlight. And quite a decent sized pouch for an Altoids tin or some gear. Just a quick little tidbit. I think they are some of the handiest things that you can get for $10.
Yeah, and that is something with the Kydex sheaths, that we didn't really touch on, is just the modularity of the Kydex sheaths, how you can add those accessories a lot easier.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Ways to carry.
Something that I was going to kind of touch on, you guys were talking earlier about the Benchmades and how the some of the newer Benchmades has that kind of pseudo Kydex sheath that's not really real Kydex. That's kind of garbage, pretty much. And, for the price point, what's kind of pathetic is, I'm going to bring up here a Cold Steel SRK. The Cold Steel Securex sheets, those are pretty cheap, but they're actually pretty solid for what they are. So if Cold Steel can produce something like this, I don't see any reason why Benchmade at their price point couldn't produce, something as basic as like a Securex style sheet.
I have to jump in and completely agree with that. I didn't even think about that, but that's what you're talking about, right? The Boltron Benchmades. I have it mounted to a scout carry, but I agree. And I have multiple SRKs with the Securex. And this is a $300 knife here anyways. And, a Cold Steel is what, $50-$60 for an SRK.
This is the CPM 3V version, and I paid right at $100 on sale for it. But still, even the $50-$60 one that you're talking about still has a very solid sheath. And so, or even Essie, for example, doesn't have a real Kydex sheath on some of their models, but even the SE6, has a great sheath that I've never felt the need to replace.
Yeah, I wish Benchmade, for a $300 knife or a $200 knife, I wish it had a sheath like Cold Steel makes.
So I want to add something really quick on that topic about ZT that I think applies to Benchmade. I talked to ZT at SHOT Show in 2018, I think it was. And I was talking to them about how I felt. This was before the Benchmade Bushcrafter and stuff, or maybe before the Pucos. But I was talking about how I felt like they made really good knives. I carried them to Afghanistan, but I felt like they were really lacking in the bushcraft market. And they were like, "What's bushcraft?" And I was like, and so I explained it to them. I was like, companies like Essie, and they're like, "I've never heard of Essie." And I was like, "What?
Oh,
Like, do you even knife, bro?" But
I think that's a t-shirt. Do you knife, bro?
Yeah, right. Benchmade is better than that. That kind of shocked me. But although Benchmade has dabbled in survival and fixed blades and bushcraft for a really long time, I don't know that they have any passion for it. I feel like they are more of a hunter's brand. And your hunter is not a knife guy, typically.
100%.
agreed.
They don't really know so much about the details and all the knife nerd stuff. I think it's more common to see survivalists and bushcraft guys and generalized outdoorsmen who are more knife nerds. So I feel like companies like Benchmade really miss out on some things that are so brutally obvious and simple to us, because they don't have the market engagement that they should probably have.
Well, me being an avid hunter myself and just having hunting buddies and stuff, the average FUD hunter is perfectly happy with a Walmart Buck or Winchester brand knife. And you start talking to them about knives and they have no clue what you're even talking about.
So that's the thing.
Bought at Tractor Supply.
That's the thing, is so many people, you talk to them about what a premium knife is, and their idea of a premium knife is a buck or a K-bar. And if they think of a knife that is higher tier than that, the only name that they know is Benchmade. And that's where Benchmade has it made, is they've become a household brand. But I mean, like,
Well, I'll throw in there and just say, kind of back on what you guys are all saying. I think the issue is that Benchmade doesn't have to care anymore. And to your point, where most of the hunters are looking more, if they buy a premium knife, probably not caring too much about the Kydex or the leather or the retention. And Phil brought it up earlier. I think it just goes to prove, when you're spending $300 on a knife and it's coming without any type of belt attachment or any way to clip it to a pack or anything, and you got to provide that yourself, to me that just kind of shows that it's just like they're not worried about it because they don't have to be. And that's just my personal opinion. Like, the amount of Benchmade knives I bought in the past compared to recently, and I think the Anonymous was the last one that I got that actually came with some sort of belt attachment. Any of the Hunt series, they don't have, but the old ones did.
Well, Benchmade at this point, they don't have to work. You're right. But Benchmade is making so much money that they're spending their money donating guns to the Democrat Party and chopping up guns for police stations. So, and screwing over knife rights. So we're at a point now, you know, it's like the market's saturated with knives. It's hard to get into this market there, especially as a custom maker, but there's so many brands that are so good. It's time for a new household name, a household name that's still hungry.
I think
Anyways,
what
I
we
think
see
S
with
is
those,
probably about there.
as I was saying, I think what we're seeing with like companies like Benchmade and a few others is the same thing that you kind of see with some gun companies, is that they're complacent. And I think a lot of the issue is that the actual makers or designers and such are not actual gun or knife people themselves. And so then they're disconnected with the reality of what's, the actual knife users are looking for.
Absolutely. Well, you have companies started by people who are passionate, and then eventually, as the company matures, suits take over. You've got penny pinchers, and you've got guys who know more about soy lattes than about the product they're selling, but they know a lot about marketing and numbers. They're going to boost the heck out of the company, but the company loses its soul.
All right.
Yeah.
I think that's something that similar happened with Schrade. They were good, then they got sold to somebody else, then they got bad, and then they came back to the US States, they got better, and then they got sold and they're bad again, just because
I think they're owned by Smith & Wesson now.
Yeah, they keep
But like Smith & Wesson, you were paying Schrade to make your knives because they knew about making knives. What makes you think that you had to pay someone else to make your knives and do a good job, but now that you can do it better? Probably should have left it to the people who knew what they were doing. Well, guys, we have thrown shade. This has become a zero tolerance and Benchmade episode, apparently. I'm all right with that.
I gotta say that I did find some common themes tonight, especially with the leather sheaths. It seemed to like JRE because it's been as a production leather sheath, because that was shown a few times, a few different knives. And then for the custom leather sheaths, we saw a few of the Spirit of the Bears. So he's definitely, Michael Spanger's there is definitely one of the top custom leather sheath makers right now, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on tonight. It's been an excellent discussion. I'm already excited for the next episode. Again, guys, I love your mug, Danny, by the way. Again, guys, these
and again, I'm sorry for anything that happened last episode, and I hope nothing this episode was taken the wrong way.
The links to these guys will be in the description box below. Please shoot them a follow. I'm glad to have you, and tune in. We'll probably have another episode next week. So thank you,
and
guys.
I just want to say, I want to see one of these podcast episodes with us actually disagreeing and really getting into it with each other.
Let's fight. Y'all have a good night.